Hi, welcome, Her Bible listeners. This is Jenny Steinbach, and I'm the producer of Her Bible. And just really excited that you're here today. And I get to introduce you to Kelly Needham. Just look forward to what she's going to share as an author and also as a mom of five. I don't often meet moms who've had more kids than me because I had four. So welcome today, Kelly.
Thanks so much, Jenny. I'm glad to be here and glad to know with a fellow mom of many kids. That's great.
Yes, yes. I'd love it if you could share a little bit about your spiritual journey and how you came to Christ.
Yeah. Well, I did grow up going to church, so heard about Jesus every Sunday and didn't really have a ton of interest, as many kids do, outside of Sunday. And then one day in my junior high years, I'm not sure exactly what grade it was, sixth or seventh, I opened my Bible in my bedroom, unprompted, at home. Why? I don't really remember. I don't remember what the occasion was, but I remember this experience of reading my Bible and having this moment, this epiphany of He's real. God is real. He is speaking to my heart. It was very personal, it was very intimate, and it was one of those moments where God jumped off the page and into my heart, and I just had an appetite and a hunger for His word from that moment on, and was regularly trying to find friends in my junior high who had any desire to talk about God outside of just the basic Sunday school moments we had together. So yeah, He got a hold of my heart at a very young age. I feel very thankful for that, and have been chasing Him since then, and of course been through many tumultuous seasons of sanctification since then, many ups and downs of God exposing new layers of spiritual pride in my heart and other hidden sins I didn't see at first. He's been slowly setting me free in ways I didn't know I needed, and has walked me through some really treacherous seasons of suffering as well and held me through it all. So I'm very thankful for all of that. But yeah, that's a little bit of my
Hmm.
journey with Jesus.
Well, thanks for sharing. I look forward to delving a little deeper into some of
Mm.
those. And I used to teach Sunday school for middle schoolers, and I love that age. And
Mhm.
that's really fun that you came to Christ during that age. And what would you say to middle schoolers today?
I would say Jesus is way more exciting than you think He is, and way more fun. Walking with Him is an adventure you don't want to miss out on. That's what I would say. So
Hmm.
I think the way that you think at that age is church, religion, Jesus, all of that gets kind of put in this category of button up your tie, straighten up, don't mess up, don't have fun, memorize your verses, you know, follow the rules. And Jesus invented fun. God invented fun. He invented adventure. And I really did feel like walking with Him in those years infused a lot of joy and fun into my life and freedom and peace. So, yeah,
Hmm. I
I
love
always want to
that.
change the narrative for what they think it is.
Yes, yes, I love that. I'd love to hear more. You mentioned some of the journey or the struggles, and I listened to an excerpt of one of your books on the purpose fooled. But yeah, so if you want to share some of your journey and how God met you in the struggles, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. Well, I got married very young when I was 20 years old to a very wonderful man who shared that passion for Jesus, which is really what attracted us to each other in the first place. And God just took us on a few unexpected twists and turns. We were planning on pretty normal careers right out of college. And instead of that, my husband was offered a spot on a record label in Nashville as a Christian recording artist. And he said yes to that. It felt very obvious that's what God had. And so my life went from what was going to be very standard, run of the mill, ordinary to I'm traveling around with my wonderfully amazing husband, who's now like a little celebrity in his own little pockets of Christian radio fans. And I'm like the sidekick to this blooming ministry. And I'm booking travel and folding t-shirts and running credit card machines and all the things sidelines while he's kind of got this growing spotlight. And it exposed a lot of pride in me. And it also exposed some faulty thinking I had in what makes life meaningful and purposeful, because it did feel like what I'm doing doesn't seem to matter as much as what he's doing. I love sharing the gospel with people too. I want to do that. And I'm watching him do that. People come up to me every night at these concerts and tell me, your husband's music has changed my life. I wasn't a Christian. Now
Wow.
I mean, it's just, I'm hearing
Hmm.
it over and over again. Of course I'm excited, but I'm like, I want to get in the action. Why am
Yeah.
I stuck over here on the bench, And just felt like this clearly isn't as important work or as meaningful. I know it's necessary. And it was really hard. It's funny to talk about now, but I really struggled. I didn't have a great attitude. I felt frustrated with my circumstances. But really, as I look back on it, it was the first exposure for me of my understanding of what makes life meaningful, what makes things full of purpose is wrong. My understanding of purpose is incorrect. And I need to work through some of that and see what God has to say.
Yeah. Could you share an example of how God encouraged you in purpose?
Yeah, probably 9 months to a year into this, where I'm just hating my life every concert. That sounds dramatic, but I did not look forward to it. I really began to ask God for just, I don't know what needs to change. Would you change things? And one of the first shifts that needed to happen is I had subtly been seeing God as kind of a means to an end. God, I want to do things
Mm.
for you because that's going to make me feel fulfilled. Not you fulfill me, God, but doing things for you will make me feel fulfilled. So you really are just a part of the equation, God, but you're not the main meal. The main meal is me getting to do everything I feel gifted at and passionate about. Of course, I'm going to do it for you, God, but it's me doing it that is really what I was after. And what I began to see as I was wrestling with the Lord and asking him questions, reading the word, is if I have God, it should be enough. And what I'm experiencing in this moment is it's not enough. And that's a problem. Is God enough? Or to say it another way, is God my purpose? Or is doing for God my purpose? Because those seem very similar. They look very similar. Those philosophies lived out almost look identical, but it's very different to live for a
Hmm.
sense of doing for God fulfills me versus God, who he is, just his existence and my access to it is fulfillment. And so he began to come back in and get that first place to where I could really say, no, my purpose isn't to do things for God. My purpose is God. I exist for him, to know him. And out of that came more health downstream from that began to infuse my activity, which we all have work to do, begin to infuse it with the right type of meaning and purpose. But it had to start with getting Jesus back in center place in that role in my life.
I love that. I learned that a lot in recording the Bible. So, just to
Mm-hmm.
explain a little bit about her Bible, it's an audio Bible in women's voices. I was driving through heavy traffic, listening to all sorts of great audiobooks, and I heard great men's and women's voices. And then when I listened to the Bible, I only heard men's voices. And I was wondering, what do younger women think? And how can we create options for them and help them? Because there's so many things in our culture that are pulling them in other directions and influencing their thinking. So it was also, I didn't know what I was getting into,
Mm-hmm.
and I learned a lot, and the Lord totally brought along, great coaches and everything. But there were so many times when I had to lay it down and say, Lord, this is your word, and I have to let that go. And it's not based on my performance. And, my voice isn't in it. So I was the producer, but it's really letting that be what he wants it to be and not trying to check off boxes every day
Mm-hmm.
to get it
Yep.
done because it took 5 years.
It's a long time.
So,
Yep.
yeah. So I love what you're saying about purpose. Why don't you pick up more of the story about purpose? And you started having children. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's part of the story too.
It absolutely is. For many moms, it is. I mean, I just talked to a young mom yesterday who's like, I prayed for a family. I asked the Lord for many children, and here I am with my first two. They're both in diapers, and I'm grumbling about it and going, this is harder than I thought. It's different than I thought. I think that's true for many of us, even those of us who've really aspired to be moms. Motherhood is a very grueling job, especially in the early years. It's very full of repetition and mundanity and hiddenness. It's very hidden. The struggles of motherhood are very unseen by eyes. And so by the time I hit that season, especially when I had two littles in diapers, I could feel that rising kind of wrestle show up again in my heart, and had a little more confidence from that first season of wrestling on the road and touring to really come to God with more hope and expectation. And also like, God, I want transformation in this. Show me what I'm not seeing. I'm frustrated. I'm not enjoying this right now. Show me how I can see differently. And again, part of it was that I'm married to a musician at this point. He is texting me pictures from photo shoots and tour buses while I'm covered in spit up and the house is a mess and I'm tired. And so just the exposure exposure to other people's lifestyles, which now we have, ad nauseum in social media. I was feeling that then. And so I came to the Lord and asked for that. And I think one of the biggest changes that happened in that season is I really felt affirmed by God in my study of the word that my desire to be great or to be seen or to make an impact, like all these desires I had, they weren't actually inappropriate desires. They weren't wrong. They were just misdirected. And that was such an encouragement. And one of the places I saw that the most is when Jesus' disciples come and ask him about greatness. They say more than once, who's going to be greatest in the kingdom of God? Which feels like, when you read it, what an arrogant question to ask. Which one of us, Jesus, is going to be at the top? But Jesus doesn't rebuke them. He doesn't look at them and say, you foolish generation, when will you understand? He gives them a very clear and direct response, an honest response. He honors their question with a legitimate answer on every occasion. And that was so affirming to go, Jesus, you didn't despise their question about greatness. You just helped them see it the way you see it. And go, yeah, there are greater people than others. Jesus even says of all men, John the Baptist is the greatest. So he even has this category of like, yeah, there are people up the ladder and down the ladder. And then he says crazy things like, well, the least in the kingdom of heaven are even greater than John. So his understanding of greatness is different. And he actually will define greatness, I think, in two primary ways: that we're to be recipients, see ourselves as children. We receive all things from God. We don't contribute, we receive. He's the great contributor, we're the great recipients. And then also that we're servants, that we have a posture not about accomplishing anything for God, but just being obedient to him, willing to go when he says go, willing to stay when he says stay. That's true greatness. And I was realizing as I was wrestling with this, with these two little kids at home, God, not only do you not despise my desire for greatness, you're actually giving me an opportunity to learn it. You have given me a season to learn what it means to be a servant. That is literally what my life is in my house. I am serving and caring for others, and it is hard, grueling labor. And this, to me, I could see it in new eyes. This is an invitation to grow in greatness in the kingdom. The very thing my heart wants. If I will receive it from him and believe those things are true, then this is a huge gift. And it really did begin to infuse a lot of purpose and meaning into those things that were very mundane, very normal, very hidden from everybody's eyes. It's like, as I choose to pick up a good attitude with my 2-year-old throwing a tantrum and calmly again redirect or discipline or move, whatever, Jesus is watching. He sees me. And this is an opportunity where he's looking and he's inviting me up the ladder, so to speak. Grow in greatness, daughter. This is true greatness. Like, all right, Jesus, I really began to do those things for God and with God. And that was really the big shift that was happening, is the tasks themselves didn't have meaning anymore. The person I did them for and with gave them meaning. So instead of seeing the few things I did outside of the house or in any kind of public space as being meaningful and everything else being meaningless, now everything rose to the occasion of everything is wildly meaningful because it is for God that I do it. It is God who sees it and who is with me and who will reward me. And all of that just comes from the person of God being our purpose and infusing our lives with purpose. It was a really wonderful transformation in my heart that has borne a lot of fruit even since then, which is why I wrote the book, because I was finding myself sharing these things with others and realizing these are truths that we all need, and not just me who had this unique situation of being on the road with my husband, or whatever. We're all facing this battle in our own hearts.
Mm-hmm. Part of the struggle for me was not having any time to think. And I had been in ministry before and had the opportunity to disciple people and help them grow in faith. And then being home with 4 rambunctious boys.
Mm-hmm.
And you wouldn't believe the comments people would make in the grocery store.
Oh yeah, I
And,
get them too.
trying to protect them because I enjoyed being their mother and I miss that now, although I don't know if I could do it again. But just kind of grabbing even 15 minutes alone where I could just read the word. In fact, some of the moms are responding that they love listening to her Bible, which I didn't have at that time, because then, you can listen as you're doing other things. So I was just trying to grab 15 minutes, of opening my Bible and reading, and always keeping an ear out for what's going on out there.
Mm-hmm.
So that I can break up the next fight.
Yep. I understand that. And I think that quiet is really important. If our purpose is a person, then life is mostly about knowing, not doing. And so I do think it takes a lot of creativity when your kids are young. And sometimes you can't do it. They have to be awake somewhere near you. It's the only option you have. But
Yes.
still, some expression of, I need to quiet my heart to connect with the living God, who, though I cannot see or hear him, is real and does exist and does commune with me if I will be still enough to pay attention and to listen to his word, to listen to the still small voice of his spirit. And that is so, so important. It is the greatest commandment, right? Love the Lord your God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength.
Yes.
Then you love your neighbors yourself. Then go love your kids. Then go love your husband. Then go care for your community. But you first have to give God your love and your
Hmm.
attention. And I think we see that sometimes in early motherhood as a privilege, like, well, that'd be nice if I could. It's like, it's a command. So I don't know how it's going to work, but it is as imperative to you as eating and sleeping. You will find a way
Hmm.
to sleep as a new mom. You'll be creative. You'll find a way. It's like, well, find a way to talk to the Lord. It doesn't have to be for hours on end, but you need to
Hmm.
connect with him. I think it is very, very important.
Yes, definitely. Kelly and I were just talking about how does she do all that she does with five children. And so she started sharing a great story with me, and I'd love for her to share it.
Yeah. I sometimes get that question. Having five kids and doing anything else is kind of unbelievable, right? So to have written a book and do a podcast, it's like, how does that work? You just must be a superhero. And I love sharing with people. No, I have an assistant, actually. This is not possible without that. And the way that that came about is in the time we were thinking about this new book, it's called Purposeful. But back when I was writing it, my husband strongly encouraged me to do it. He said, I think now's the time. And some of my pastors at my church did the same thing. And I looked at everybody and I said, well, I can't do that unless we hire some help. And I don't want to hire a nanny. I've done that in the past. I don't want to outsource my kids. I'd rather outsource other tasks that take up my time. But like, I can't write this book. I can't and continue to be a healthy lover of Jesus, lover of my family. And so we posted a few videos on my social media and to people who followed my blog at the time and just said, hey, I want to write another book, but we'll have to hire some help for that to be possible. If you want to contribute toward that, you can. And in a very relatively short amount of time, God not only provided through people the funds for a hire, he provided the person. I didn't actually
Wow.
even put out a public call for needing help, but it was through a mutual friend who connected me with somebody and said, hey, you're looking for an assistant, right? And I said, how did you know that? Did I tell you? He said, no, you didn't tell me, but I just thought maybe you would need one. I was like, oh, well, so he connected me with somebody and she still works for us. So without that help getting into place, it would not have been possible. We can't do it all. No one can do it all. And we are fooling ourselves to think that we are. And if we do try to do it all, we end up unhealthy and we don't honor Jesus in the process. And I just wasn't interested in that in this process. So yeah, if that help goes away, then the public ministry goes away because that family is always there and needs my care. But the other things are
Yes.
optional. So long as there's help, we'll keep doing it. But yeah.
So I was going to ask if she doesn't take care of the kids, then what exactly does she do?
Yeah. So a lot of household administrative tasks and then a lot of small business tasks. So my husband and I, through his music, have always had kind of a small business that runs all kind of song, concert stuff through it. I have always managed that website, connected with our financial team, overseen the minutia of that. And then there's household stuff, grocery purchases, light bulbs need to be ordered. This needs to be returned. This was the wrong size for this child. So she's doing a lot of that, returning things to me to the store, placing grocery orders, monitoring stuff that's low in the house, responding to some emails so that I don't have to, medical bills that come in. I'm like, we need to put this on a payment plan. Can you call them and do that for me? I mean, so it's somebody in the house is doing it. Whether you are a single parent or you're married, one of you is doing these things. So I just tried to look at my whole life and went, what's taking up all of my time? I want to spend the time that I normally spend with my kids, but what are some other things taking my time that I could train somebody else to do on my behalf so that I could be with my kids? And then when they go to school, I can write and then come home and not have another mountain of work left for me of I need to call back all these things and confirm all
Hmm.
these appointments. And two of my sons have cochlear implants. And so there's constant upkeep on that, So it's like she was doing all of that so that I really could go out and write, come home, be present with my family and not be underneath another mountain of work. She was taking care of as much of that as possible and still does a lot of that. So,
Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. I wanted to ask if you're willing to share. I've been interacting more with some of the deaf ministries. And so, what's the nature of their cochlear implants?
sure. So they're actually single sided deaf. So they've got no hearing in one side of their ears. I have two sons who are adopted. These are my two adopted sons. They're actually not biologically related, but just God in his providence put them both into our family. So they have lost hearing on one side, and we decided 2 years ago to proceed with cochlear implant surgery, which has been a wonderful, wonderful decision and has helped them a lot in school and other areas. But because they're single-sided hearing, they don't rely primarily on sign language, but they do have a lot of other friends now that are in that community. Hearing loss of any kind is a significant life-altering thing, even when it's on one side. And plenty of adults who experience the same thing will tell you that it is not the same to have one ear. Two ears are a game changer for just how you hear things. And so, of course, with even more severe loss on both sides, it's a disability you cannot see with your eyes. And that's one of
Hmm.
the things that makes it very challenging is when you go out in public, you don't carry a cane or a stick because you're blind, and people go, oh, I understand I need to have extra empathy or care. You look very normal. And it creates a lot of awkward situations for people trying to talk to you. And no one wants to walk around with a sign that says, I can't hear. So it's a challenging disability. Cochlear implants are a huge gift and don't solve every problem for every person, but it's becoming more widely available to people of varying levels of hearing loss. That's pretty new. And so I've been encouraging a lot of people to look into it because it's been a great gift to our family, though it was a learning curve at first. All the
Yeah.
batteries and recharging them. And we have a little 1-year-old as well who thinks that these little blinking things magnetized to their heads are just toys. So, it's created all of that, but it's been a great journey. So,
Hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing because many of my friends have things that they struggle with for their kids. And I'm glad that you found that that's helping and
mm,
making a difference for them and helping them be more successful in school and things like that. So, in the midst of raising 5 kids, I see that you have a podcast too. So, what I heard this morning was on Ecclesiastes, looking at challenging passages. Is that the theme of the podcast, or do you want to share more about that?
yeah, my husband and I do that together now. It's been really fun. And we do cover a lot of really complex and controversial things in the word. And with the hope that people would find more confidence in God's word and that they would know that there are real answers and things for those questions that they might have. But even more than that, I mean, we really hope to get people into God's word so that they can get over themselves and get more of God. Why those passages are difficult and confusing to us is because they really are often dethroning us from the center of the universe and putting God back at the center. And that's uncomfortable. As humans, we come into the world just default. I am at the center. Mankind is at the center. God exists to serve me. And it's the opposite. We exist for God. He made us. We are His, the sheep of His pasture, and we exist for His glory. And that's an uncomfortable transition, but one that brings about a lot of freedom and a lot of peace because it's as it should be. And so, even in these newer seasons we're producing, that's kind of the theme we've been using is we want to get you into God's word so you can get over yourself because life's better when God's the center. Your life will get better
Hmm.
when you keep God central. And we do that a lot through those really tricky passages, whether it's in Judges or Joshua or Ecclesiastes or Revelation. It's like, let's go there. Let's look at him. God put it in his word. He's not embarrassed by it. And he has good things for us if we'll sit in it a little while.
Yeah, in fact, this reminds me, last year I read through the Bible with Tara Lee Cobble, and one
Oh,
of the
yeah.
things that she talked about was we can pick out our favorite passages, and then we're kind of encouraging ourselves. But if we
Mhm.
read the whole word, then we get to know God. And
That's right.
so having a God focus of searching the whole word, searching for what is he trying to communicate with us and developing that relationship with him, like you were saying, instead of just picking out our favorite passages to comfort us today, isn't really helping us grow and understand God more. And so I
Right.
love what you're saying. I feel that too, that people need to be in his word and getting to
Mhm.
know him and having his perspective on the challenges they're facing.
Mhm. We do. We need all of God's word to be holistic, healthy Christians.
Hmm.
It's like a well-rounded diet. You need grain and dairy and fruits and vegetables. It's like we need all of it. We need the prophetic books, we need the Psalms, we need the historical books. It's all really important to our growth.
Hmm. So, speaking of growth, what are you doing right now or studying to grow in the word yourself? And how is God
Yeah.
speaking to you?
Well, I'm actually reading through the Bible in a year. This is the first time I've actually done that. I don't know if that's surprising here, but
No,
I
it's good.
love to go slow in the
Yes.
word. So I'm usually reading through just because I'm more of a studier. I want to go deep in every verse I read. And if you're reading the Bible in a year, you're reading quite a few chapters in a day. It's not always enough time to go deep, but I do think it's good. You get to cover it at a faster pace to catch some bigger themes. So I've been doing that, and I have been reading in First Chronicles right now, which is a really challenging book at the beginning. It's a lot of genealogies and things like that, but it's so striking to me in reading those passages that God is so personal. He cares about individuals. I mean, these are people, I don't know who they are. This guy, son of this guy, son of this guy who lived in this area by this thing. I mean, it's so detailed, which that can lull us to sleep sometimes, but that person mattered to God, and God knew where he lived
Hmm.
and cared about his family and his relations. And I think to the Israelites who were probably maybe receiving that post exile, they're coming back, this heritage, this connection is important to them to preserve. And so God preserved it for them in his word and in this book. And so I've just been encouraged by that. It's reminding me that God knows me and my family lineage, and he knows where I live and what the circumstances are surrounding my life. And they might not be written in the Bible, but they're written in his book. And that's encouraging. Yeah. So that's kind of been on my heart the last few days of my reading, and what God's burdening me with.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. And I did slowly work through reading the Bible last year and finished actually, I think, in March. And so now I'm going in depth in a study in Galatians and just loving what I'm learning there about the freedom that he calls us to and the purity of the gospel. And it's been interesting, just to see that transition. It's like I'm seeing more in the study in Galatians because I read and listened to the whole Bible last year.
Mm,
So that was really interesting. And I don't know, one point was that we have the freedom to approach the throne of grace and the
yeah.
right to approach the
Mm-hmm.
throne of grace because of what Jesus did on the cross. But then I remembered from Job that Satan goes in there and he talks to God. And I'm like, you know what? I need to go in as often as possible. I have the right to be in there.
Yep, that's right.
And so that was like kind of an eye-opening moment there.
I love that.
So, who's your favorite female character of the Bible and
Ooh,
why?
that's an easy one. A woman named Jehoshaphat. She is a
Mhm.
often unknown character that appears in Kings and Chronicles, Second Kings, and then I think Second Chronicles, First or Second Chronicles. I don't remember the reference there, but she is famous for being an aunt. So there's a moment in Israel's history when the line of David is almost severed in this moment where Queen Athaliah, who's the mother of a king who's just died, she is daughter of wicked Jezebel, and she wants to take over the kingdom. And so she begins killing the family, the royal family, which is her own grandchildren, by the way. It's crazy. And so she is going through killing all of them. And Jehoshaphat steps up. These are her brother's children that are being killed. And she finds the youngest, little baby Joash. He's 1 year old, and she steals him away with his nurse and puts him in hiding and oversees his care for 6 years. I mean, you said you have four boys. I've got three. Talk about a baby boy from 1 years, 1 to 7. That is a hard child to keep in quiet and secret while you're raising them, while an evil queen who would like you dead is in charge. But she does that. And because of her faithfulness, because of her sense that this is wrong and what needs to happen, Joash survives. He's reinstated as king at 7 years old. Athaliah is put to death. There's peace in the land. And more importantly, the line of David is preserved. And that is a huge promise, a covenant in the Old Testament that's important. And she probably didn't have a sense of the bigger picture of what was going on. But man, I love that little moment in our Old Testament. It's fun.
Yes, I love that. It kind of reminds me of what you were saying too about the hidden work of
Yes.
motherhood.
It's probably one of the reasons I like her story too.
Yes.
Is her obedience to God, yeah, pulled her out of the spotlight and into hiddenness with a boy that wasn't hers. And yet she recognized she had an obligation to do something, and she did, even when it cost her greatly. And even after he's reinstated, you actually hear more about her husband than her. She's married to the priest Jehoiada, who does a lot more of the reforming and counseling of Joash. And so you see his name appear more. But here, the real risk was taken by this woman to spare the life of her little nephew. I just think it's a really beautiful scene in the scriptures.
Yes. Lots of brave women taking care of youngsters.
Yes.
Yeah. So, is there anything else that you'd like to share?
Man, I don't think so. Besides just the re-emphasis for anyone listening that God does desire us to have meaningful, purposeful lives. He really does. The thing that we want most, we want a life that matters. We want a life that makes an impact. We want something unique to do. We want to be great and seen, all those things. He actually wants that for us too. And he doesn't despise those desires in us. And he just wants to be at the center of those desires, that we really weren't made for verbs. We weren't made to do things. Your calling is not associated with a particular skill set that you might have for a season and lose and is dependent on situations. Your purpose is a person, your calling, you're called to Christ. And that is actually going to infuse all of your life with more meaning than you thought possible and really meet that deep ache that you have for more. It's really going to be found in Him. And that has been one of the most liberating truths of my life. So I love getting to pass that on.
Yes, thank you. So it's been great meeting you, Kelly, and hearing more of your story. And I love how you are making Jesus the focus. And thank you so much for spending time with me. And yeah, we just pray that the Lord really blesses what you're doing and encourages many women and men through it.
Thank you, Jenny. Thanks so much. It's been a joy to be on with you today.
Yes, thank you.